famous actor in disguise is mistreated in a store, but when he reveals his true identity, the staff is filled with shock and embarrassment. James Hawthorne stepped out into the lively streets of Los Angeles, his heart racing with the thrill of anonymity. For once, he was not the famous actor, the star whose face graced magazine covers. Today, he was just another person in the crowd, free from the constant gaze of the public eye. The sun warmed his skin as he walked, and the sounds of laughter and chatter filled the air. But as he took in the vibrant city, a question nagged at him. Could he really escape the spotlight, even for a day? With a sense of adventure, James decided to visit a high-end clothing store. The moment he crossed the threshold, however, the excitement faded. The store was filled with elegant displays and impeccably dressed shoppers. He felt a wave of self-consciousness wash over him. Surrounded by fashionable clothes and confident patrons, he wondered if he belonged here at all. What was he doing among these stylish people? "Can I help you?" A voice cut through his thoughts. James turned to see Ryder, the salesperson. The man wore a sleek black uniform, his posture rigid, eyes narrowed as he looked James up and down. "We don't have anything for you," Ryder added, his tone dripping with disdain. James felt a mix of confusion and embarrassment. Was it the way he was dressed? Did he really stand out that much? "I'm just looking," he replied, trying to maintain his composure. But Ryder merely scoffed, turning away to assist a group of more fashionable customers. The sting of rejection hit James hard. Why did it hurt so much? He was used to being treated with respect, being the center of attention, yet here he was, invisible and unwanted. As he wandered deeper into the store, an internal battle raged within him. Should he reveal who he was? Would it change how people treated him, or would it only serve to highlight the divide between celebrity and ordinary life? James weighed the pros and cons, feeling the weight of his celebrity status pressing down on him like a heavy cloak. In this moment, he craved the simplicity of being just James, not the celebrated actor everyone recognized. He glanced around, observing the interactions between customers and staff. Some received warm welcomes, while others faced the same indifference he had. James felt a growing sense of empathy for those who, like him, had been dismissed. Did they also feel the sting of exclusion? He could see it in their eyes, the longing for connection, the desire to be seen. Suddenly, Ryder approached him again, his expression unreadable. "You really should leave if you're not buying anything," he said, his voice laced with superiority. James's heart raced, a mixture of humiliation and frustration bubbling inside him. How could someone be so cruel? Was this how it felt to be judged solely on appearances? The air felt thick with tension as James took a deep breath, wrestling with his emotions. He could feel the eyes of other customers on him, curiosity mixed with disbelief. In that moment, he understood. This was not just about him anymore. It was about everyone who had ever felt belittled, overlooked, or dismissed. But could he stand up for himself? Could he challenge the status quo? James hesitated, the familiar urge to retreat creeping back in. Yet, the thought of remaining silent gnawed at him. The weight of the world felt heavy on his shoulders, and he knew he had to make a choice. Would he remain incognito, or would he reveal his true identity, risking further humiliation but potentially sparking a change? As he stood there, the bustling store around him seemed to fade away. James felt a shift within himself, a flicker of determination igniting in his chest. Maybe it was time to confront the reality of his fame and the loneliness that came with it. Would he take a step towards authenticity, or would he let Ryder's contempt define his day? The moment hung in the air, waiting for him to decide. James stood quietly in the high-end clothing store, feeling the weight of his thoughts swell within him. He watched as shoppers moved with ease, engaging in cheerful conversations while the store staff treated them with the warmth of genuine interest. This was a stark contrast to the cold indifference he had just faced. As he observed, James noticed a young woman browsing through a rack of dresses. She seemed excited, yet the salesperson barely glanced her way. Instead, the The staff member's eyes were glued to a nearby group of well-dressed customers, laughing and trying on various outfits. James felt a pang in his chest. It was as if he could see himself in that young woman, longing for attention and validation. "Can I help you with anything?" A voice snapped, breaking his train of thought. James turned to see Ryder, the arrogant salesperson, standing with arms crossed, a smirk on his face. "Or are you just here to take up space?" The words stung, and James felt his cheeks flush. He wanted to defend himself, to explain that he had every right to be there, but he hesitated. What would be the point? Ryder was not interested in hearing his story. Instead, he was trapped in a world that judged people based on appearances and status. "Just looking," James managed to reply, forcing a smile that felt heavy on his face. He knew that this was a lie. He wasn't just looking. He was searching for a connection, for a moment where he could feel human again, away from the bright lights and cameras. As he stood there, the growing sense of empathy within him swelled. He saw another customer, an older man, struggling to find a shirt in his size. The staff member, instead of offering assistance, rolled his eyes and continued to chat with a friend nearby. James felt a familiar pain wash over him. It was the same dismissive attitude he had faced just moments ago. "Doesn't anyone care?" he thought, feeling a deep frustration. He had experienced this alienation many times before, but witnessing it happen to others made it even harder to bear. It struck him how fame had built a wall around him, making it difficult to forge genuine connections. Each time he stepped into a public space, he felt more like a spectacle than a person. Fame is a lonely road, he reflected, staring blankly at a row of expensive suits. People see the name, not the man. The realization hit him like a wave. He had sacrificed many real experiences for the glitz of celebrity life. This thought gnawed at him, igniting a deep sense of longing for something sincere. Suddenly, Ryder's voice cut through his thoughts again. "Are you going to stand there all day, or are you going to buy something?" The sarcasm dripped from his words, and James felt a familiar sting of humiliation rise within him. "Why are you like this?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He felt a mix of anger and sadness. "Can't you see that we're all just trying to find something we like, just like you?" Ryder scoffed. "I don't care about your life story. Either buy something or get out." It was like a slap in the face, and James could feel the frustration boiling inside him. "You don't even know me," James replied, his voice steadier now. "I'm not just a customer, I'm a person." Ryder rolled his eyes, clearly not interested in James's plea. "You're just another face in the crowd. Get used to it." At that moment, James felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had come to this store seeking a brief escape from his celebrity status, and instead found himself drowning in a sea of judgment. He clenched his fists, fighting the urge to shout. The dismissive attitudes he had witnessed today were not just about him. They were a reflection of a larger problem. James realized that he could no longer ignore the pain that connected them all. As he stood there, the internal struggle within him deepened, and he knew he had to confront his feelings head-on. This day was turning into more than a simple outing. It was a mirror reflecting his life, filled with lessons he had yet to learn. James took a deep breath, preparing to face whatever came next. The tension in the air was thick, and he could sense that a pivotal moment was approaching. The moment hung in the air, thick with tension. Ryder, the arrogant salesperson, had just ordered James to leave the store in a voice that cut through the chatter of the bustling shop. James felt his heart race, and a wave of emotions crashed over him. Anger, embarrassment, and a deep sadness swirled within him, pushing him to a breaking point. He could no longer hold back. In one swift motion, James removed his sunglasses and hat. The simple act felt monumental. He stood tall, revealing his identity to Ryder and the astonished onlookers who had been watching the scene unfold. A hush fell over the store, and all eyes turned toward him. James took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every gaze upon him. "I am James Hawthorne," he declared, his voice steady, yet charged with raw emotion. The words echoed in the silence, a thunderous proclamation that seemed to reshape the atmosphere around them. Gasps traveled through the crowd. Whispers began as customers processed who stood before them. Ryder's face transformed from arrogance to disbelief, his eyes widening in shock. The reality of James's identity struck him hard, and the moment felt surreal. The silence in the store was heavy, as if time itself had paused. James stood in the center, feeling both vulnerable and powerful. "You know," he continued, "it's hard to be treated like this. It's hard to feel invisible when you're so visible to the world." His voice cracked slightly, and he took a moment to collect himself. Ryder's bravado faltered. I didn't know," he stammered, his confidence slipping away. He looked around at the customers who had witnessed his disrespect. "I thought you were just some guy, not someone important." James shook his head slowly. "Being famous doesn't make me less of a person. I deserve respect just like anyone else. We all do." His words resonated in the room, stirring something within the customers. An older woman, standing near the back, spoke up. "You're right, James. We all have our stories. Sometimes people forget that." Her voice was shaky, but filled with conviction. James nodded at her, grateful for her support. "Exactly. We all face judgment in different ways. It's not just about fame. It's about being human." Ryder's expression softened as he began to understand the impact of his actions. "I'm sorry," he said, his tone shifting from defensive to sincere. "I was wrong to treat you that way. I let my own insecurities cloud my judgment." There was a moment of vulnerability in Ryder's eyes, a glimpse into the person behind the arrogance. James noticed this shift and felt a wave of compassion wash over him. "It's okay," James replied gently. "We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them." The atmosphere in the store began to change. Customers started to engage in quiet conversations among themselves, reflecting on the moment they had just witnessed. They shared knowing glances, realizing the power of respect and understanding. A young man, inspired by the exchange, stepped forward. "I have felt that way too. Judged because of how I look or what I wear, it's not easy." James turned to him, appreciating the openness. "Thank you for sharing. It's brave to speak up. We need to lift each other up instead of tearing each other down." As the dialogue continued, Ryder stood quietly, absorbing the words exchanged. The realization of his behavior began to sink in, and in that moment, he felt a sense of accountability. People began to share their experiences, creating an unexpected bond among them. Stories of judgment, misunderstanding, and the longing for respect filled the air. The store, once a place of superficiality, transformed into a space of connection and empathy. James felt a sense of relief wash over him. What had started as a day filled with humiliation was becoming a moment of reckoning for everyone present. He had opened a door to understanding, and now they all stood at the threshold together, ready to step into a new way of seeing one another. As the silence in the store hung heavily in the air, Ryder's eyes widened in disbelief. He stood frozen, staring at James Hawthorne, the man he had just dismissed without a second thought. It took a moment for the realization to sink in, and when it did, panic washed over him. "No, it can't be you," he stammered, his voice shaky. James took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. "It is me," he replied, his tone calm but firm. "And you just treated me like I was nobody." Ryder's face turned red, embarrassment creeping in as he tried to regain his composure. I didn't know," he sputtered, his arrogance slipping away. "I'm sorry, I was wrong." The unexpected apology caught James off guard. He had prepared himself for anger or defensiveness, but instead, he saw a flicker of vulnerability in Ryder's eyes. "Why did you treat me that way?" James asked, genuinely curious. Ryder looked down, avoiding eye contact. "I guess I thought you were just another guy trying to fit in," he admitted, his voice low. "I've been in this job for too long, and sometimes I let my own insecurities take over." I thought if I acted tough, it would make me feel better about myself. James nodded slowly, understanding how easy it was to fall into that trap. We all have our struggles, he said softly. But treating others poorly doesn't help anyone. It only makes things worse. The other customers in the store began to stir, witnessing this unexpected exchange. They were drawn into the conversation, whispering among themselves. A woman near the front spoke up, her voice clear. I've felt that way before too, being judged without anyone knowing who I really am. Ryder looked around, finally seeing the impact of his actions. I'm sorry to anyone I've treated poorly, he said, his voice gaining strength. I didn't realize how much my words could hurt. James smiled, appreciating Ryder's newfound honesty. It's okay, Ryder. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. With those words, a wave of understanding seemed to wash over the group. A man in a business suit chimed in. I've been on the receiving end of that kind of treatment. It's not easy. He looked at Ryder. But it's good to hear you apologize. Ryder nodded, visibly moved. Thank you. I want to do better from now on. It's time to treat everyone with respect, no matter who they are. James felt a warmth inside him, seeing the shift in the atmosphere. That's the spirit. If we can all take a moment to understand each other, we can change how we interact in places like this. The group began to engage in a dialogue, sharing their own experiences of feeling dismissed or judged. A young woman with bright pink hair spoke up, her voice passionate. It's so easy to forget that everyone has a story. We should remember that before we judge someone based on appearances. As more customers joined in, the store transformed from a place of tension to one of open conversation. They started to discuss how important it is to treat everyone with kindness, regardless of their background or how they look. Ryder watched in awe, realizing that James had sparked something profound in this moment. I never thought I could learn so much from a single encounter, he said, glancing at James. You've opened my eyes. James shrugged, a humble smile on his face. It's not about me. It's about all of us making a change together. The atmosphere shifted as the customers continued to talk, sharing laughter and stories. The unity they felt was palpable, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like the store was more than just a retail space. It was a community. James felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that change could happen in the most unexpected places. Ryder's transformation, along with the empathy growing among the customers, showed him that even small moments could lead to bigger conversations about respect and understanding. In the quiet aftermath of the confrontation, James stood in the high-end clothing store, an unusual calm settling over him. The initial shock of revealing his identity still lingered in the air, but now he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He glanced around at the other customers, their expressions shifting from surprise to admiration. He could see that they were no longer judging him as just a celebrity. They were beginning to see him as a person. James took a deep breath, feeling connected to the world around him in a way he had not felt in a long time. Maybe this is what I needed, he thought. The day had started with dread, but now it had transformed into something meaningful. He approached a woman standing nearby, her eyes wide with surprise. I'm sorry for the scene, James said, offering a warm smile. It's not every day I get to remind people about kindness, you know? She nodded slowly, still processing what had just happened. You handled it so well. I can't believe you spoke up like that. James shrugged, feeling the weight of his own words. Sometimes, we just have to remind each other that we're all human. We all deserve respect. As he spoke, others nearby began to share their own stories. A young man, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. I once walked into a restaurant, and the staff treated me like I didn't belong there. It felt awful, he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. James turned to him, his heart swelling with empathy. You're not alone. I think we all have moments like that, but those moments can bring us together if we let them. The conversation among the customers grew, weaving a tapestry of shared experiences. A woman with bright red hair chimed in. I was judged for my clothes when I tried to buy a gift for my daughter. It made me feel so small. James nodded, understanding the pain behind her words. That's exactly what I mean. We need to create a space where everyone feels valued, no matter what they wear or who they are. The group began to discuss ideas for change, a sense of community forming around James. He felt a spark ignite within him, a desire to do more than just talk. It was time to take action. What if I organized an event? He suggested, his voice filled with excitement. Something to promote empathy and respect? The young man's eyes lit up. That would be amazing. You could use your platform to reach so many people. I can help too, the woman with the red hair said. We can share our stories and invite others to join in. James felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Thank you. Together, we can make a difference. Let's show the world that kindness matters. As they brainstormed ideas, James felt his heart race with anticipation. The idea of using his celebrity status for something meaningful excited him. It was a chance to connect with people on a deeper level, to transform the negative experiences into a movement for good. Let's plan this out, James said, his voice steady. We can reach out to local community leaders and other celebrities. We can create a space where everyone feels safe to share their stories. The group nodded, energized by the prospect. They exchanged phone numbers and promised to meet again soon. James could see the enthusiasm in their eyes, and it filled him with hope. As he left the store, James felt lighter than he had in years. He had turned a painful experience into a stepping stone for something greater. This is just the beginning, he thought, a smile spreading across his face. I want to make a real difference. The sun was setting over Los Angeles, casting a warm glow on the streets. James walked with a newfound sense of purpose, ready to embrace the challenges ahead. He knew the path wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to advocate for kindness and respect in a world that often forgot their importance. With each step, he felt more connected to the people around him, ready to lead the way toward change. As the days passed after James Hawthorne's emotional experience in the store, he found himself consumed by thoughts of how he could make a difference. With a renewed sense of purpose, he began to plan an event that would focus on understanding and compassion. He reached out to community leaders and fellow celebrities, eager to collaborate on an impactful experience. One sunny afternoon, James sat at a large table in a cozy cafe, surrounded by a group of familiar faces. Among them were Sarah, a passionate community organizer, and Marcus, a popular musician known for his charitable work. They were deep in conversation about the event. I really think we should have a panel discussion, Sarah suggested, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. It would give people a chance to share their stories and learn from each other. James nodded, feeling inspired. That's a great idea. We can invite people from different backgrounds to speak. It's important to highlight the diversity of experiences. Marcus chimed in, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. We could also have live music. Music has a way of bringing people together. It can create a joyful atmosphere while we talk about serious issues. The group continued to brainstorm ideas, their excitement growing with each passing moment. They discussed locations, potential speakers, and ways to promote the event. James felt a sense of camaraderie with his companions, each of them eager to contribute to a cause that mattered. As the day of the event approached, James felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. He wanted this gathering to be meaningful, and he hoped it would lead to real change in how people treated one another. On the morning of the event, he arrived early to set up, greeted by a vibrant crowd gathered at the park. The sun shone brightly as people of all ages and backgrounds came together, ready to share their stories. James walked through the crowd, smiling and shaking hands. He could feel the energy in the air, a sense of unity and hope. James, thank you for doing this, a woman exclaimed, her eyes shining with gratitude. It means so much to us. James smiled back, his heart swelling. Thank you for being here. Your stories are what make this event special. As the event began, James took the stage, feeling the weight of the moment. He looked out at the audience, a sea of faces, some hopeful, some nervous. He took a deep breath and spoke from the heart. "Today is about more than just sharing stories. It's about understanding each other," he began, his voice steady. "I learned a valuable lesson recently about how our perceptions can blind us to the truth of each other's experiences. We all have our struggles, and we all deserve respect." The crowd listened intently, nodding in agreement. James continued, "I want to encourage us all to listen deeply and to see beyond the surface. We can make a difference by showing kindness to one another." After James spoke, the panel began. People shared their stories of being judged or dismissed, their voices filled with emotion. Each story resonated with the audience, and as the discussions unfolded, a powerful connection formed among those present. One man stood up, his voice shaking slightly. "I was homeless for years, and people often looked right through me," he said. "It's moments like this that remind me there is hope and understanding out there." The crowd erupted in applause, and James felt a surge of pride. This was what he had hoped for, a space where people could connect and empathize. As the event came to a close, James felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The conversations sparked that day would continue long after everyone left the park. He knew that together, they had taken a step toward fostering deeper connections, breaking down the barriers that often separated them. As people began to disperse, a woman approached James, her eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you for this," she said softly. "It's given me hope." James smiled warmly, knowing that this was just the beginning. "Let's keep this conversation going," he replied, feeling the weight of his celebrity status transformed into something meaningful and impactful. Share this story if you believe that understanding and compassion can create real change in our communities. Leave a comment about a time when a meaningful conversation transformed your perspective, and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this. Let's keep the dialogue going and spread hope together.